Yeah, we're going to be talking about a global perspective on disability with this brilliant panel, who I will ask to introduce themselves. I think, Dinesh, should we start with you, please?
Absolutely, yeah. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining live in the room today or from around the world. My name is Dinesh Sharma, and I'm the regional head of wealth and personal banking for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I'm based in Dubai, and for those of you who cannot see me, I'm a middle-aged man, a father of three, with a growing white hair, receding hairline, and wearing a white shirt. I'm absolutely delighted to be on the panel, Robin, with our 16 panelists, and that everyone else has joined us today to raise awareness on our disability inclusion agenda. In addition to my day-to-day responsibility in HSBC, this year I volunteered myself to be the global sponsor of our disability efforts for wealth and personal banking globally, and to be able to use my voice to advance the disability agenda within HSBC, both for employees and for clients. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here and looking forward to learning as well from our fellow panelists.
Thank you, Dinesh. Who's at the end?
Natsumi. Yeah. Can I start? Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Natsumi from SOLIT, Japan. I'm from Japan. So we are a social startup that primarily committed in diversity and inclusion. We have two main businesses. One is we have got own inclusive and adaptive fashion brand that champions diversity by allowing consumers to choose their own design, size, and then length of the garment for each part of their body according to their own preference, regardless of mobility, size, and also the body shape. And the second one is we have providing consulting and training services to help other organizations to achieve their inclusion goals. And then by doing that, we are utilizing our knowledge and also input, all the experiences we gained from operation and creation of our brand. So helping, we are providing a one-stop solution for every company that to achieve their inclusion goal through providing business strategies and making their inclusive working offices, as well as helping to develop their accessible products and services. So that's introduction of me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. My name is Irene Mbari-Kirika. I'm the founder and executive director of Enable. So at Enable, we focus on empowering youth with disabilities across Africa through technology, because we know technology is a powerful tool, and we know that young people really embrace technology. So in the process, we also host the Inclusive Africa Conference that brings together African countries, the international community, and users with disabilities to really talk about disability, technology, innovation. Because what you find in Africa is we've invested a lot of time over the years on disability. But when it comes to digital accessibility or the technology component, we're still on ground zero. But the energy is exciting, and we're very excited. So we know we are heading somewhere. And because of the innovations you've made before us, we are able to come in, adapt, and leapfrog, and maybe innovate around other things. So thank you. Back to you, Robin.
Thanks, Gina.
Thank you. I'm Gina. I have brown hair, brown eyes, and a mix of a British Mexican look, and that also not look, but also personality. So I can tell you, as a photographer, I've had this idea 19 years ago to start my charity called Side of Emotion, and it started by teaching photography to blind people as a way to prove that when you focus in the ability and not in the disability, something that sounded impossible was possible. And after 19 years, we've seen how that has enabled to create a more inclusive narrative, focusing in the potential and not in the limitations. And also we do these sensory dinners in the dark. We started them in Mexico. Here I know you have them. But that has also helped a lot change the narrative and give employment and really focusing what we do have in common. And 11 years ago, I started Capaxia, which is a consultancy firm that has been focusing in inclusive leadership, marketing, communication, and recruitment. That holistic approach was completely influenced by the UK. And I took it to Mexico, which after 11 years, I must say, is just starting to make sense to a lot of people. So it's really nice to be here and share with my colleagues here what are the challenges in different regions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. My mum, who's also blind, was a waitress at a Dining in the Dark installation.
There you go.
Brilliant. So thank you. Yeah, we've got 4 very distinct different areas of the world represented here. And what we're going to be doing is exploring how campaigns that, how disability can be authentically reflected in campaigns, how it can land well and not so well in those areas, and, you know, how you'd get local communities involved. So let's start with Natsumi.
Yeah.
How is disability perceived in your part of the world, and how does that impact the daily lives of people with disabilities?
So while I'm talking is just part of the, reality. So not everything can be, can talk. But so in Japan, there's a unique culture that values social harmony and conformity, which can shape the perception of disability. So there's the term I'm going to say in Japanese, derukui wa utareru, which means the nails that stick out get hammered down. That can actually cause the people preventing to standing out. Mm-hmm. So that the way of the mindset can also shape the way that how people with disability can behave in like a different social settings, like educational or professional settings. So a lot of many disabled individuals may hesitate to ask for like request for accommodations or their needs because they don't want to get standing out, they don't want to draw attention, or sometimes they don't want to disrupt the harmony of the group. So that can also create the way that, it's happening, but at the same time, there's a positive movement now that there is growing awareness of disability rights, due to the international advocacy and also local effort to promote inclusion. So it started to change, but there's still needs of urge needing of the people to speak out, and then especially for the authentic representations. Mm-hmm. That's the reality in Japan.
Okay.
Fantastic. Irene?
Yes. So for me, when I speak about Kenya and other African countries and the experience we are having with Inclusive Africa, actually we just wrapped up, we're getting ready to launch a campaign on disability, and it's on storytelling, where we were giving the mics to different people with disabilities and asking them to share their story, what they want to say. So it's not scripted. And it was very interesting. And for me, on the project, I was the client. What was interesting was how the agencies, we took the agency staff for a 2 to 3 day training on disability etiquette to start with, because we realized they have no clue what disability even means. But along the process, you realize how much people don't know about disability, but it's from a very innocent place. What you don't know, and you can't act on it. You can't budget for it. And for me, what I find to be a struggle, and it's something we're discussing in the office, how when you talk about disability, most of the time people walk on eggshells. If you don't have a disability, you're so scared to say the wrong thing. You're so scared, should I even ask? And I have situations where people come to me and say, hey, Irene, can I ask you a question? But I want to say I'm sorry first before I ask, because you're extremely sensitive. So then I ask myself, when I think about the advertising agencies here that want to learn about disability and you don't even have a clue what disability is about, then it makes it a very tough environment for you to even learn about anything because of the fear of saying something incorrectly. So for me, I think there's that fear, not just here, but across the board, even in Africa. And it makes me wonder, what do we as a disability community need to do to open our hearts and our doors and give people a chance to say the wrong thing and make the mistake? And then we take that as an opportunity to educate them and push them to at least bring them closer to where we want them to be. Because otherwise it's going to be a struggle, and half the time people are not going to talk loudly about just simple questions on disabilities that can have a huge impact on the work that you're doing. So that's something we've found to be across the board, that as something that we hope can be addressed with maybe more awareness creation, and also working together with those with disabilities from the onset as part of the project. Then it gives you a chance to ask a question, crack a joke, and really get deep into understanding what disability really means. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks.
Yeah.
Gina?
So in Mexico, I think what's the biggest problem I keep saying is that I like to call it there's a lot of mental blindness, and I want to put it like that. There's a lot of people that they are so afraid of seeing beyond the labels and the stereotypes that they're just focusing in what people with disabilities don't have, no? And I think that's the biggest problem. There's so much fear of connecting with a human being that they are just focusing in a narrative that we inherited for a while, that I understand it had a purpose when it started, the narrative, which was about supporting the community of disabled people, but it was from a very charitable angle. And we needed that from a time where it was hidden. So from being hidden, they're seen, but from that perspective. And then we started an evolution to, okay, it's about employment. So we have to get them back into the employment world, which is great. But in context in Mexico, because the government, they don't support much of the education of people who are disabled, who then what happens is that the talent is not ready to get a job to the needs of the corporate. And then when it comes to really thinking about of them as consumers, that's completely something they're super afraid. That's like, oh my God, we cannot make money from this community. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest problem. I'm like, first of most, they're people like you and me. And can you just see them beyond the label, remove the label, but as I said, remove your own label from the eyes and connect with a human being? Because like you and me, they have the needs, the dreams, the requirements to go and enjoy an independent life. So I think that's the biggest for me is a lack of bravery. Like, we're developing now a campaign that I was inspired again from the UK, and I take things back to Mexico. And 2 years ago, even our allies, people from the NGO world, they didn't want to go and say, we cannot talk about them as consumers. This is a matter of principle. This is about human rights. I was like, yeah, but also we also need to see them as consumers. Now, 2 years later, they're on board, the partners, they see it. But the corporates, they are really afraid. They don't want to go there. They're making this link that if they supported a campaign that speaks to people with disabilities, and I'm aware, sorry, here I want to say in Mexico we say people with disabilities. I think here is disabled. So that's the other thing. Yeah. Please don't take it personally. I'm speaking both English and in the Spanish. But that's the other thing I think we're encountering, that the corporates are really afraid. We did a focus group with the community. They all say, we want this, we're ready. And yet they are still very afraid about it. And where we are is this campaign was developed with DDB, the agency in Mexico, that they are completely on board after a few years of working with them and seeing the value. So it's a campaign that it could be like for anyone, it's proven, the data is there, the numbers are there proving that it's an opportunity. And yet the fear is so big that in Mexico they feel safer staying in the narrative of the charity case or the superhero. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying that's disconnection completely. It's not about superhero. It's not about victim. It's about human beings wanting and needing like any others. So I think that's where I'm more passionate about is remove that mental blindness that I call. It's like be more bold. And I think the biggest disability they're having at the moment is being paralyzed in that way of not moving and to see beyond that, right? So I think that's it. And again, I'm sorry if I'm using language that's not the right one as I speak in
America. Thank you. In the States, they still say handicap. So, we're kind of getting insights into the rich variety here. I quite like the superhero label. Quite like it. Dinesh.
We need to talk more.
Dinesh, if you don't mind, I'd actually like to broaden out the question slightly because HSBC, it's a global organization, a global company. So, how does a company that spans so many regions, effectively approach the huge range of approaches and cultural norms when it comes to disability? And how do you treat all your consumers, all your customers fairly, across the delivery of your services and all your communications?
Okay, thank you, Robin. Well, as we heard from my fellow panelists, I think there are different views on disability around the world, and that shapes the community response in respective markets. You heard multiple terms like people with disability, disabled people. In Middle East, they call people of determination. Let's say it's another term to add to the thing. But having said that, I've been in the Middle East for around last 10 years now, and I've seen significant progress being made towards understanding disability. Having said that, I think it is still far behind the understanding on disabled people, their needs, requirements, and inclusions in the Western world than it is in the Middle East, but it's headed in the right direction. And if you look at it as the world's largest international bank at HSBC, we take a global approach to this. We do not care about what the local management of disabled people or the accessibility that they have. We want to make sure that we provide a global framework. We treat everybody the way we would like to treat people, whether in the UK or in Europe or anywhere around the world. So our framework around this is global. Because we actually believe it's the right thing to do, both for employees and for our customers. And actually, as Gina mentioned, it actually makes a lot of business sense as well. I think it's not just for the sake of it, the business opportunity is huge. And if you look at the recent report on return on disability growth, it talks about there are close to 1.85 billion people with disability globally, with a market worth of $1.9 trillion. And if you add their family and friends, that's another 3.4 billion people with another $11 trillion. So you're talking about close to 5 billion of customer segment with a 13 trillion market opportunity. So it's not something that's good to do, it's something it makes good business sense as well. So it helps our customers, helps our employees, and helps the community as well, and makes business sense. So why would you not do it? And part of the reason why many companies haven't gone to that line is also about understanding. I think we simply don't know enough. And I think what we're trying to do is with these opportunities like this, trying to understand the needs and requirements better to see how we continue to make progress on that basis. And within HSBC, I think there are 4 or 5 key pillars we're working on. One is to make sure from a training and awareness perspective, to make sure people have the right empathy and understanding of and how to deal with our fellow colleagues and make sure everybody feels welcome and valued equally with ability to thrive. We also have a workplace adjustment program that was rolled out in the UK, and as we speak is being rolled out in India and Asia, and then coming to Middle East by middle of next year, which is to make sure the workplace adjustments incorporate all the requirements that disabled people might have, whether it's neurodiversity challenges or anything else. So that's something that we are deeply passionate about and working on it. In addition to that, we have a thriving ability employee resource group that continues to work with the disabled and neurodiverse colleagues and carers to make sure they have the right care support and mentorship available to them. So that's third. And in addition to that, we always look at whether the banking is accessible or not. So if you look at our website, it is digitally accessible across all our markets. And even in a market like UAE, we did a benchmarking and our website was the most accessible across any peer groups in the market. And we got a 96% score from the Central Bank of UAE, which is the highest score. The next bank was less than 80% score. So this is something we want to do it both for our employees and for our clients because we feel it's the right thing to do. And we want to be the most digital accessible bank globally. And obviously the steps that we're taking is to make sure that we have our right place there from an employee perspective and from a customer perspective. But there is more lot to be done. I think we're just getting started. Back to you.
Dinesh, thank you. Thank you so much. So we have 3, maybe 4 questions left. And so I'm not going to lean on anyone to answer any of these if you don't want to. So yeah, just kind of come in on these if that's right. So let's talk about media. Let's talk about the portrayal of disability in the media in your region, in your part of the world, if you can. And, what would you ask people in your area, in your country, in your continent, to consider when putting together a communications campaign or an advertising campaign that would make it authentic and appropriate for your customers in that area?
In Japan, it used to be like, for example, media, and then let's say not just media, but like entertainment as well. A lot of times the people, like non-disabled people are cast as a disabled actor, that actually causes lots of problem of, there's no authenticity, and then there's lack of opportunity for disabled community. But at the same time, not at the same time. Now there's as I said, there's growing opportunity for disabled community as well. So people started to cast, people with disability, but at the same time, a lot of times the people who get cast are, like a visible disability. So not many, there's an intersection of, disability or any, racial or any character that the human has, but then there's a lack of those authentic representation. But then it's actually difficult to also audiences to understand from media. So I think there's a way is that there's a media that always, need to cast, start from visible disability, but then we cannot stop talking about, there's a more, diverse people in this community, and we are, in Japan, and also we as a, advocate, we stop not talking about this. So that's what's happening right now in Japan.
Yeah. In our case, the beauty of it is that there's a lot of commercials, advertisements, campaigns around disability, which is fantastic because we're creating more awareness. Where I see the gap is that sometimes it's a bit too commercialized, so it can become a bit unrealistic. So we have to sort of find a balance. But I think where the struggle is really getting the media or the advertising agencies to really think about disabilities in all their adverts, in all their campaigns, because those campaigns, when you deliver them to the audience, you don't say, this does not include those with disabilities. You're not supposed to watch. So we want to make sure Robin doesn't have 30 seconds of what? What did you call it? 30 seconds of nothing?
Oh, yeah, noise. Yeah.
Of noise, yeah. So how do we make all the advertisements that we're doing daily inclusive? I think that's where we're going to win, because then you'll be speaking to everyone and someone like Robin will not feel left out. That's the same struggle we have. We haven't gotten there yet. We're still telling the wonderful stories of those with disabilities. But I think we need to transition to the bigger picture, which is where everyone is getting left out from the main message. Yeah.
And I would add just an example. When we did it was like 10 years ago with Unilever in Mexico. We were working to do the first advert in Mexico that it would represent people with and without disabilities in the same advert. And it was kids playing, that they were going to be in an accessible playground. And it was really interesting because that's how it started our relationship with DDB, the agency we're working with. And first, when I received the storyline, I was like, whoa, this is very, very stereotypical. This is not going to work. And it was an interesting starting point to say, why don't we start by doing some awareness workshop with the team that is going to be involved and bring also the people with and without disabilities to work together. So we had kids, their families that were going to be part of the advert. We had the agency. So we did invest, and up to now we always, when we're working with the communication marketing teams, we do an awareness training first, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page, because we notice that that's where sometimes a gap exists. And the other part was also to just make sure that the community is always involved. So we're always bringing people from the community to assess and say this goes, this doesn't, this sense of humor. Yes, no, this is too much, really work with the agencies, because still we see the stereotype keeps being the first narrative that comes on board. So the more we can involve the different parties, let's say, to create the message, that has been very, very helpful to move away from the stereotypes.
Right. Nothing about us without us is a well-known phrase.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, do you guys think that attitudes to disabilities or disability is changing? And if so, have you got any tangible examples you could give?
Robin, if I can come on that, I think definitely there are. I would say the progress is slow, but it's still there. And if I talk about the part of the world where I am based right now, both two markets, UAE and Saudi, are making significant efforts. So, for example, disability is built into the inclusion as a part of the national strategy. It's a part of Abu Dhabi Economic Vision 2030, Dubai Vision 2030, even Saudi Vision 2030. There are Special Olympics in Abu Dhabi get additional coverage now. There are more athletes participating in these events. They are doing a heightened focus on accessibility even in the Dubai Expo that happened in 22. And next year, Dubai is hosting the Accessibility Expo in 2025 in Dubai itself. It's the largest exhibition of people with disabilities in the Middle East. So I think the countries are making a significant progress there. It can always be more fast track for sure, but I think definitely progress is there. Even within HSBC, as you know, later this month we are hosting a Rugby Sevens event in Dubai, and I'm delighted that we are able to partner with Jodie Onsley as our Rugby 7 spokesperson. The Jodie is, if you're not aware, is the first female deaf rugby player to represent England senior team, and is the world's first deaf female rugby player in Rugby 7. And she's going to be here. She's going to talk to people. She's going to help us communicate on our disability inclusion agenda, not only to our clients but to our employees as well as to everybody who's coming to watch Rugby 7 as well. So I think progress is definitely there, and I think that attitudes are changing as well. Can be faster for sure.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Dinesh. We've got 4 minutes maybe. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Who'd like to come in?
Okay. You can go.
Yeah, okay. One of our clients in Japan, our organization helped their company to, achieve their inclusive workplaces. And then the company started to, there's a division between non-disabled workers and then disabled workers. And then we try to make a more inclusive workplace there in the office. And then they started to, talk more, and then they actually develop one item that created through inclusive design. And then that actually, they, as our client said, they never thought of doing this way without, disability people's voice. So actually, I think that's the very strong point that, people with disability has got own talent that can bring business, values to and contribute to organization success.
Yeah. So have we made progress? The answer is yes and no. And this is how I describe it. So if you look at Africa, at African countries, Kenya in particular, 80% of the population lives in the rural areas, in villages. And I've had the privilege of working in both environments with some of our programs. And what we find is that in the city, there's so much awareness, there's so much going on, there's so much activity. But that's only like 20% of the population. When you go to the village where the 80% is, some of the programs we work on, there's nothing going on disability. So, and it's heartbreaking when you see the opportunities that these kids are missing out on, or even those with disabilities who are older are missing out on. So when we ask, are we making progress? I think based on population, barely. Because there's a lot of people who need to benefit from some of this work. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you.
Very, very briefly, I would say in Mexico and Latam, it has improved. I would say it has improved. As I say, from being hidden to now have a place. And there's more and more organizations, corporate organizations, also hiring people with disabilities. So we're starting to see that they're investing more in this talent, that they are seeing the value. So in that way, yes. We're starting to see very, very few organizations that the marketing and communication teams are starting to go there, which what I found really interesting is why here we have amazing companies doing it great, and the same company in Mexico won't do anything, right? I'm like, but I've shown you what they're doing in the UK, the same company. Why wouldn't you do it in Mexico? And that is, for me, I would say that's my biggest, wow, what is it? Why is it that the corporates in one country, they can do it, but in the other one cannot do it? And I think that's where me putting forward this campaign in Mexico, I was really like, it's a moment, we're going to get the corporates. And I would go to the same ones from here and say, you're doing it, no, here in the UK, what's happening in Mexico? And no, they won't move forward. They're too afraid. So I think there's a fear still to go to the next level of dignifying, I would say, the sector. But we are better on showcasing, talking about it, giving opportunities for employment and some training. So it's getting better. I think I would like, obviously, we are working towards this, so we're more, I would say, strict on what is right and wrong, right? But yeah, it's definitely, I see 19 years of being in this world, I would say there is evolution, and that inspires us to keep going.
Fantastic, thank you. So yeah, here in the UK, I mean, tell me if you disagree, guys, but I think we still are kind of borderline between tokenism and kind of just background, incidental. You know, okay, that person's got a disability. They're just a character along with everybody else. So yeah, it's a journey everywhere. Yeah. Really interesting that the same company has a different approach or a different set of values in different countries. That's amazing. Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys. Sorry, I think we're a tiny bit over. We're passing over to Mark to moderate the next amazing session. Huge round of applause, please, to all four guests.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.